my first bullet point outlines how the whole project comes together, and I'll outline that before explaining a little bit about the work that myself and my colleague Rox are doing within the West Wales cluster. So currently the whole project works with 3 clusters of PSBs, and we've got 3 different teams of people working. So there's a team working across the North Wales PSBs as a cluster of 6. I've got 2 other colleagues working as a team with Cwmtach and Bridgend, and there's myself and my colleague Rox working with the West Wales cluster. And we invited, once funding came through from the National Lottery for the project, we invited PSBs to put in an expression of interest, and they were selected on criteria of what they wanted to achieve, and did that align with the project we have funding for, where best learning could be undertaken, and making sure obviously that there was a geographical spread, urban, rural spread, etc. So myself and my colleague Rox are working with the West Wales cluster. So we're offering support to Ceredigion, Pembrokeshire and Carmarthenshire. And we meet with officers all together, and we also meet with each PSB separately. We only have about a day and a half a week. So as you can imagine, our work has to be really quite targeted, and we're aiming to model something that's happened in one PSB and share practice across others. The overall aim of Project Dowie is to support practice development, firstly of collaboration between organisations, which is part of the work that we've already been discussing today and we'll go on to discuss after my presentation. We're aiming to further the involvement of diverse communities, and I said earlier, particularly those voices that are seldom heard, and looking at how to move towards full co-production over 4 years. Now, obviously, this takes time, and co-production isn't something that is going to happen continually from the start. So we're recognising that it's a journey and adding value now with a view to more innovative practice and ongoing practice in co-production over a 4-year period. And the most important part of the way we're working, which is the bit in red at the bottom here, we're not consultants that are going away to do work and then handing it back. So instead, we're working with PSBs, we're working with subgroups to offer mentorship, training, etc., to support the work that's being undertaken. Because we're only working with 3 clusters, and there's a number of PSBs across Wales, the wider picture of the work we're doing is to enable all of the PSBs to benefit from the learning that's within Project Dowie. So if you look at our website, if you look at other work that we're doing, you'll see that there's shared learning from a PSB network. We're sharing findings, experiences and lessons learned from North Wales into other areas, from Cwmtach into other areas, and from good practice that's happening in West Wales to other areas. So we're trying to link the national picture together through the Project Dowie to, again, add value. Part of the way we're doing this, firstly, we have a project news bulletin. So we have co-production notes that are available that highlight some of the work that's being undertaken in co-production and involvement. And secondly, we have monthly learning events, which are informal, and they're for all PSBs and their members to attend. And it's a shared learning, shared questions, kind of working out what's going on in practice to bring people together. So that's the way that our whole project works. And I thought some examples are often the easiest way to understand what it looks like on a day-to-day context. So this is examples of what we've done so far. So with the consultations that have been undertaken for developing the wellbeing plans, we've supported co-delivering workshops, designing workshops, and aiming to have more meaningful consultation in the way in which the wellbeing plans have been formulated. We've advised on creative methods, particularly for engaging seldom heard voices. So, for example, I coordinated a workshop for online for primary school age children in Ceredigion that used participatory activities. I've got a family of cuddly goats that I used in it, and thinking about different ways that enable people to speak in a way that is most comfortable to them. We've offered training and mentoring for organisations in co-production, values and practice. So, for example, in Carmarthenshire, we've delivered some training for practitioners in early years, looking at involvement and co-production in early years delivery and development. We're helping organisations develop relationships, which is exactly what this event's about, which is why I'm here, to offer support, to facilitate, and look at what needs to happen to enable relationships to develop and what makes most sense for organisations given their own constraints and the own things that they have to work to. And lastly, we're supporting the move from engagement to involvement. So we're recognising that co-production is happening in places at certain times, but that's different to ongoing involvement, and looking at what needs to happen for that transformation to occur, and for people in communities to feel that they do have a say without being called upon as and when deadlines emerge for organisations. So it's looking at what that move looks like, what support we can offer, and how we can add value to the things that organisations are already happening. I've got 4 workshop questions. I don't know if you want to go into the workshop questions or whether there's any questions you want to address to me first about Project Dowie before we go into the workshop questions. I'm open to either, but I'm looking to Paminda for which way forward would be most useful.
Okay, Vikki, I think it would be a really good idea if colleagues who may have some questions could actually put questions to you now.
Okay.
And I'll start by asking you, really, if you could say a little bit more about how organizations can actually directly access training and mentoring that you mentioned, or do they have to go through the PSB, or what's the process, basically?
Okay. Project Dowie is specifically for PSB business. So we can support capacity building in partner organisations, but it needs to clearly come through the PSB, obviously for our own funding criteria. As I said, we've already delivered some training in Carmarthenshire to early years that was coordinated with support from PSB officers. So that's the way that it comes through. Obviously, our news bulletins, sign up to them. I can put my colleagues' contact details in the chat, so you're welcome to get in touch with my colleague Dan, who's doing all the administration and the coordination of the kind of news and sharing practice from the project. So I'll just put his name in now.
Thank you. Colleagues, any colleagues have questions for Vikki before we go into the discussion group? And I know that Vikki's got some questions for us to think around our discussion. So any initial questions? Anna, are you indicating? Okay.
Yes, please. Thank you. I was just wondering, Vikki, how your work is linked to the plan's qualitative and quantitative measures, and how it's value for money assured.
Okay, it's value for money via our monitoring with the National Lottery that's funded it. It's aimed to be about learning and sharing practice in co-production. So it's adding value rather than replicating what's already happening. In terms of the shape of the project, we're not so much looking at the monitoring that is required under statutory obligations. We're looking at what's happening on the ground and where we can best add to that. So it's very much about working next to and alongside and working with people rather than having a high level approach.